How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Pro Football Podcast with your host, Alec Pecano. Hold up. With your host, Alec Pecano, on Wednesday, October the 2nd. Today's show, I'm going to go over my upset picks and locks of the week for week 5 in the NFL, as well as reviewing week 4 in the NFL, Sunday games, and giving you some trade candidates for this year for the trade deadline. Let's get started here with Sunday recap. And we're going to start with the Saints and the Falcons. And we're going to start with the box score. And we're going to start with New Orleans. Derek Carr had a good game passing-wise, 239 yards, but he had no touchdowns, and he had one interception, which I don't understand how the Saints lost this game. Obviously, it was because of field goals. And so, but another good game from Alvin Kamara. 19 carries, 77 yards, 4.1 yards per attempt on the ground, and a touchdown. Kamara looks like he's going to get paid a lot of money, whether it be by New Orleans or somebody else in the offseason. Then, of course, you had Taysom Hill, vulture away 2 touchdowns. And Taysom Hill had 6 carries for 24 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rashid Shaheed had 2 carries for 14 yards. Jamal Williams had 3 carries. And Derek Carr had 3 carries for 5 yards. The receiving. First of all, this is what you want to see from Chris Olave. 8 for 87. I understand there was no touchdown. Then you had Shaheed. He also had 8 catches for 83 yards. No touchdown. Kamara had 7 for 42. Juwan Johnson had 2 catches. Jamal Williams had 2 catches. Mason Tipton had 1. Shaheed did lose a fumble, so that was the only turnover. Adebo was targeted 12. Paulson Adebo targeted 12 times, 10 solo tackles, 3 pass defense. I think for the Saints, he was the best guy on their defense against the Falcons. Alontae Taylor was only targeted 4 times, 4 solo tackles, 2 PBUs. And then you had a couple QB hits from one from Chase Young, one from Peyton Turner, and one from Nathan Shepard and by Brian Bresee. Now let's go over to the Atlanta side. And same thing with Kirk Cousins. He had 1 less passing yard than Derek Carr. He had 238 passing yards on 35 passing attempts. That's the thing that scares me about Atlanta, is they are capable of throwing it a lot. But then they've also got a run game. And coming into the season, I said Bijan Robinson was one of the best young running backs in the NFL. And I think he still is. But it's a little worrisome here that he's splitting carries all of a sudden with Tyler Algier. He had 7 carries. Algier had 8. Algier had 60 yards. Bijan had 28. And that scares me. Receiving game. Drake London had another good game. 6 for 64. Darnell Mooney, 3 for 56. Ray McCloud, 6 catches, 52 yards. Bijan. This is I said I was scared about Bijan. I am. because not only is he a threat in the run game, he's a threat in the pass game too. 4 catches, 46 yards, 11 yards, 11.5 yard average per catch. Tyler Algier had 2 catches. The one that's confusing to me here is look at Kyle Pitts. No targets, no catches, no receptions, no receiving yards, no touchdowns. And Raheem Morris came out and said after the game that he's not a big fan of stats. I'm sorry, Raheem, but Kyle Pitts is your third best player on offense behind Bijan and Drake London. Why is he not getting targets? He needs to get targets, or you should trade him. Overall, that was a good game. Next game we're going to look at is Chicago and the Rams. And I'm going to start with the Rams here. Stafford had 224 passing yards on 29 passing attempts. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Okay. Kyren Williams continues to be a big factor in the run game. 19 carries, 94 yards, and a touchdown. And then you had, Ronnie Rivers got 6 carries for 26 yards, 4.3 yards per average, 4.9 for Kyren. And they're doing this behind an offensive line that is just ravaged with injuries, which impresses me a lot. Now you get to the receiving game, and the receivers. Tutu Atwell, 4 for 82. Jordan Winnington led the team in targets and catches last week. And a loss. I'm impressed with the 6th-round rookie out of Texas. And he had 8 targets. He led the team in targets and catches. And he led the team in routes run as well. Kyren had 4 catches for 10 yards on 4 targets. The next closest guy to Jordan Winnington in targets is Colby Parkinson with 7. That tells you that they really trust Jordan Winnington. And now we get to Chicago. Caleb Williams. I'm going to say this is the first good game Caleb Williams has had in the NFL. He took only 3 sacks. Both teams combined, there was 6 sacks in this game. 3 for the Bears, 3 for the Rams. But 157 passing yards on 23 passing attempts for Caleb Williams and a touchdown. I'd chalk that up to a good game script for Caleb Williams, and I think the Bears have something. Now the rushing attack. You had DeAndre Swift, 16 for 93 and a touchdown. Roschon Johnson had 7 carries, 26 yards and a touchdown. Caleb Williams, 5 carries, 12 yards. Okay. So that doesn't really what I'm going to say is that doesn't really surprise me that he had that few carries. But I think throughout the season, once they learn this offense a lot better, because they're only 4 games in with Caleb Williams under center, I think look out for the Bears offense. Now the receiving. Swift led the team in targets with 7. He also had 7 catches. Kmet, second on the team in targets, was DJ Moore with 6. And he had 3 catches, 22 yards, and a touchdown. Then you had 3 targets apiece for Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, and Cole Kmet. Each 2 out of the 3 having 3 catches, and Odunze only having 1 catch. If you want to win, you got to get Kmet more involved. 3 catches, yeah. but that's not really, to me, that's not really being involved. They looked his way, and he was probably bracket covered because he's the third best receiver on this team and maybe the fourth best option. And in Odunze, you need to get him more involved. He needs to have at least 4 or 5 catches the next couple games. Or else on tomorrow's show, when I do my coaches on the hot seat, you might see the Bears coach on the hot seat. That's a little teaser to what's ahead on the next show. Packers and Vikings. I'm going to briefly say this was a really good game. The Packers were down a lot of the game, and they came back and tried to make it a game, and they did. They only lost by 2. And Jordan Love looked good in his return. The Colts and Steelers was another good game. And the Colts, as you see, ended up winning 27-24. The game I want to take a look at, and Jets fans, turn away, please. I don't think you're going to like the outcome here. How? And I'm going to start with the Broncos. Bo Nix, 60 passing yards, 1 touchdown. How, Jets fans, how do you lose a game where you let a guy only throw for 60 yards passing? It just explain that to me. How? I don't get it. Then again, that's why I'm not a coach. I'm only a YouTube personality. But Bo Nix, 60 passing yards on 25 passing attempts. That is not something I thought that would be on my bingo card. And then in a running game, you had Javonte Williams, 16 carries, 77 yards. Jaleel McLaughlin, 9 for 46. Bo Nix, 5 carries, 3 yards. And Tyler Batty, 1 carry, no yards. And my thoughts and prayers go out to Tyler Batty, who had a injury scare on the sideline. They had to stretcher him off. Please send your thoughts and prayers to him. Receiving wise, it was an ugly day receiving. You see 3 guys had a catch. 3 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown for Courtland Sutton. 1 catch for Michael Burton for 3 yards. Javonte Williams, 2 catches, 3 yards. And, Reynolds was targeted twice. Lil Jordan Humphrey once. Greg Dulcich once. Nate Adams targeted 1 time. Jaleel McLaughlin targeted 1 time. Troy Franklin had 4 targets. 2 catches, -2 yards. 2 catches, -4 yards on 2 targets for Tyler Batty. Now we go over to the Jets side. The Jets were up 9-3 in this game, and they blew the lead. Aaron Rodgers threw on 42 passing attempts, had 225 passing yards. Rushing, Braylon Allen, 34 yards rushing. Aaron Rodgers, 26 yards. Breece Hall, 4 yards rushing. That is embarrassing. Mike Williams, 4 catches, 67 yards. Lazard, 5 for 58 on 8 targets. 5 targets for Mike Williams. 8 targets for Garrett Wilson. 5 catches, 41 yards. 8 targets for Conklin, 4 catches. 5 targets for Breece Hall, 2 catches. Braylon Allen, a target, 1 catch. 2 catches for 10 yards on 2 targets for Jeremy Ruckert. 1 catch for 6 yards on 4 targets from Xavier Gipson. All around, and I heard stuff about this game that it was just, they could not move the football, and it was raining profusely. So therefore, that's why this is a very, very low-scoring game, and I don't understand it. And now we are going to get to the upset picks for this week for the NFL. My first upset pick is the Vikings plus 2.5 to upset the Jets. Yes, I understand that the Jets might bounce back this week, but something also tells me that they might be still feeling down on themselves after last week. And that gives the Vikings a good chance here to pull the upset. And need I mention who is the quarterback for the Vikings? Oh, wait. I'll give you a second. Sam Darnold. It's a revenge game for Sam Darnold, who was thrown off to the side by the Jets, just like all the other quarterbacks they had. So I think this is the perfect game to get back at the Jets for Sam Darnold for letting them go. My next upset is the Buccaneers plus 1.5 to upset the Falcons. And that game is tomorrow night. I actually really liked the way the Buccaneers played Sunday against the Eagles. I understand the Eagles didn't have their top two receivers. They didn't have Devin White, who has been inactive for the first 4 weeks of the season now. But I still like how they played. And I think they have a chance here to beat the Falcons. And my last upset is the Steelers plus 2.5 on Sunday Night Football to upset the Dallas Cowboys. Sorry, Cowboy fans. I think you're on upset alert. And now my locks of the week. My first lock is the Saints to beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. And I think it can happen. Kansas City is without Rashid Rice, who the Chiefs feared tore his Achilles last week after a dolphin dive from Patrick Mahomes. My second one is the Rams to beat the Packers. We saw the Rams last week. They almost came back and won. They barely lost. I think they can beat the Packers. And my last lock of the week is the Bears to beat the Panthers. And here are my top 4 trade candidates for this week for the NFL. Number 4, Hassan Reddick of the New York Jets. He has been holding out the entire year with hope of getting a new contract. And here are 3 teams that I think could trade for him. Number 3, the Tampa Bay. Oh, no, that's number 1. Number 3, the Miami Dolphins. And here's my explanation to why the Dolphins could trade for him. They need pass rush help. Jalen Phillips left the game on Monday night with an injury. And I think if the Dolphins want to compete, once they get Tua back, because that's the other thing they need is a quarterback. And you may see later on in this segment who I have them maybe trading for. But I think they also need help with pass rush. And Hassan Reddick would bring that help. Number 2 team that could trade for Hassan Reddick, the Detroit Lions. The Lions need somebody on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson to rush the passer. It can't be Aiden Hutchinson all by himself. They need somebody else. And I think Hassan Reddick could be the perfect fit there. And my number 1 team to trade for Hassan Reddick is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, the Bucs have Joe Tryon, Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, but Kalijah Kancey's hurt. And they just had Shavassi Dennis go on IR. And I think Hassan Reddick would fit perfect for the Buccaneers. And yes, I know they might be up against the cap a little bit, but I think it would be a good trade partner for the Buccaneers and the Jets. My number 3 trade candidate is Bryce Young And here's the 3 teams I have for Bryce Young. Number 3, the Los Angeles Rams. And yes, I understand Stafford's their quarterback right now, but they don't have a quarterback on the roster that's going to replace Matthew Stafford after he either retires or maybe gets traded. I don't trust Stetson Bennett, and I think they also have Carson Wentz. I don't trust Carson Wentz either. I don't trust either because I think they might try to trade for Bryce Young. Number 2, and I mentioned this team a minute ago, the Miami Dolphins. Yes, I understand they have Tua, but Tua, as we've seen over the last couple of years, is kind of injury prone to concussions. And we've seen Tyler Huntley it doesn't look like Tyler Huntley's going to work for the Dolphins. We know Skylar Thompson ain't going to work. Why don't you go out and maybe try to trade for Bryce Young and see if you could fix something with Bryce Young? Because Carolina has the tendency to ruin players, and then they get out of there and they do really good. And the number 1 team I have that should trade for Bryce Young is the New York Giants. I'm sorry, Daniel Jones. You're not the answer at quarterback. The Giants overpaid you after one good season, and I think they should get out of that contract, and that would entail trading Daniel Jones. Maybe you do 1-for-1. You trade Daniel Jones to the Panthers for Bryce Young. My number 2 trade candidate for this week is wide receiver of the Denver Broncos, Courtland Sutton. And the top 3 teams I think that should trade for him are number 3, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are ravaged at wide receiver. They do not have Puka Nacua. They don't have Cooper Kupp. They're playing with 3 backup level wide receivers right now. And I think Courtland Sutton would fit in that offense perfectly. And I think that's a Les Snead should make that move in a heartbeat, trading for Courtland Sutton. You could give up a couple draft picks. The number 2 team I think that should go out and trade for Courtland Sutton, and they were linked to him in the offseason, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers should go out and try to make a move for Courtland Sutton. It's between him and Brandon Ayuk to get traded to the Steelers in the offseason. Obviously, as we saw, neither one of them did get traded. But that doesn't mean that Courtland Sutton won't get traded before the trade deadline. And number 1 is the Los Angeles Chargers. And yes, I understand they're in the same division, but it's very common in some cases for guys that are in the same division to get traded. And I think that Courtland Sutton going to the Chargers would put the Chargers over the top and have them be a really good Super Bowl contender. So that is the 3 teams for Courtland Sutton. And number 1 is a guy that just got added to the trade block by the Raiders today, Davante Adams. And here's the 3 teams I think could go after him. Number 3, this team, it's obvious they need a wide receiver. It is the Kansas City Chiefs. They just lost Rashid Rice. Hollywood Brown is out for the season. And I think that would be a perfect fit for Davante Adams. It's Kansas City. Number 2, the Dallas Cowboys. If Jerry Jones really says he's all in, go out and make a move for Davante Adams. I understand you're up against the cap, but I still think that if you make this move, it puts you in contention for the Super Bowl. And number 1, this team has also been linked to Davante Adams, and they have the cap space to do it. They have $27 million. The Washington Commanders. Could you imagine a receiver room of Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, Zach Ertz, Reed Sinnett, Luke McCaffrey? That's dangerous. That's a dangerous wide receiver room. And I'll give you a bonus team, and nobody's talking about them. Maybe Devontae Adams wants to go back to Green Bay. And I think the Packers would do it now that Rodgers is not on Green Bay anymore. I think Devontae would happily go back to the Packers, maybe for a second-round pick and 2 players. But we'll see. We'll see if any of these trades happen. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss a future upload, as next week is going to be a busy week for my YouTube with a lot of watch parties and other cool video ideas. But that's going to wrap up the podcast for today. I will see y'all back here at 3 o'clock, where I give out my game picks, coaches on the hot seat, and much more, with another episode of the Pro Football Podcast. And tonight at 8 o'clock, we have the Fourth and Long podcast for college football with me and my co-host Bradley. I will see y'all later today. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday morning.